next speaker today is Keshav Kartik. Quenching his continuous curiosity through inquiry and insight describes Keshav's way of life. Whether he was running a home-based restaurant or exploring the woods on his mountain bike, he found a correlation between curiosity, analysis, and learning. A freshman at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, double majoring in economics and finance, Keshav aspires to use his passion to help businesses make ethical and sustainable decisions. Keshav's love for understanding the science of economics and ethics skyrocketed while he was analyzing the impact of national, global events on capital markets. Being a true believer in humanism, he involved himself in mentoring students and fundraising for social causes, which sparked his interest in human behaviors and psychology. Outside of his academic interests, Keshav is a fitness enthusiast, an avid debater, and a hardened extrovert. His speech title today is, "Are you being deceived?" I'm not sure. Am I being deceived? I guess we'll find out very soon. Please welcome Keshav onto the stage.
Don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. This lesson has been taught to millions of people for many years. We spend so much time on different phone applications and technologies that what we see morphs into how we think. My life changed when I got a phone. I remember when I was begging my parents for one, I gave the classic excuses. I won't get addicted. I won't get a social media. It's only for emergencies. What did I do the first 15 minutes I had a phone? I already had Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and more. I'm like any other teenager in America. The second I feel any boredom, I can go on these apps and pass time by. But spending all of this time on different technologies has a dark side. I remember shortly after my phone, during my 8th grade lunch period, I was playing basketball with a couple of friends. After an intense game, we were standing in a circle just talking about life, and there was a group of girls behind us. I couldn't help but overhear that they were talking about famous Instagram models and how they'll never be as pretty as them, or they wish they could look like them one day. I didn't say anything to hide the fact that I was eavesdropping, but what they said lingered in my mind for a long time, and I still remember it to this day. It never crossed my mind that just pressing that simple post button could have such a significant impact on someone else's self-esteem. I wasn't affected by anything until years later. Throughout my life, I never had the greatest body. I was a stick in early childhood, but quickly turned very large once I developed an addiction to junk food and video games. In 8th grade, a friend convinced me to join the wrestling team. I thought, why not? And went for it. And that's where I fell in love with exercise. I did long distance running throughout my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. But I always had a terrible diet. This caused me to have a bit of a belly. And all that cardio combined with zero weightlifting also made me have zero muscle. I basically had the least admirable body. During sophomore year, during quarantine, I watched all the Marvel movies with my family. And one thing that really stuck out to me about those movies was how every male superhero would have the most insane bodies, and how every female in or out of the movies would thirst over them. Now, my body was the polar opposite of theirs. I was chubby with zero muscle, while they had the body of a Greek god while being shredded like an athlete. The realization that I really don't look that great slowly turned into a deep-seated insecurity within me. From that day forward, I cut how much I ate in half and began running 6 miles every single day. After months of hard work and dedication, I lost 16 pounds. But all that cardio did was just make me skinny. I wanted to look like a movie star. I begged my parents for many months to get me a barbell, a bench, and a set of dumbbells in my basement. And eventually they said yes. I began lifting there every day, but I was eating very little, which caused me to not make that much progress. I later on researched a bunch, came up with the optimal training, diet plan, and I got myself a gym membership. From then on, I was making progress. My one dream was that one day I look in the mirror and I'm proud of who I see. And one day, I stepped in front of the mirror, flexed every muscle I could, sucked in my stomach as much as possible, and I still wasn't proud. How? How could I work so hard and still not be proud of who I see in the mirror? Maybe I just need to work harder, right? During my senior year, when school reopened, I began going to the weight room with a bunch of my friends every single day. Some of them had been working out since the very start of high school, so their bodies were amazing, and I started to look at them as an inspiration. One day after an intense workout, I was walking back to the locker room with my best bodied friend. I put my ego aside and mustered up the courage to ask one simple question. What should I do to look more like you? Now, I expected to see their face brighten up, honored that I would ask them such a nice question, and honored that I looked at them as an inspiration. But all that faced me was a look of confusion. What? I look terrible. What? I'm so fat. What? I'm nothing to look up to. I was flabbergasted. How could he see himself that way? To me, he looks amazing, but he looks at himself the same way that I look at myself. I asked a few of my other friends the same question, but I was faced with the same answer. I then asked them, how do you see yourself that way? And all of them gave me the same answer. Body dysmorphia. Some of them even opened up to me, saying that they go as far as to eat one meal a day because they hate how they look. I went home that day and researched what is body dysmorphia, and what I found shocked me. Its definition fit every person in that weight room, including myself. Body dysmorphia is when you see yourself as less fit and less attractive than you actually are. You look in the mirror and think, oh, my eyes are too big, my teeth are too yellow, I'm not that fit, I'm too short. You eat yourself up inside. The effects of this constant self-belittlement are disastrous. It can tank one's self-confidence, ability to socialize, and some will go as far as to not leave the house because they're ashamed of how they look. A study from the National Library of Medicine took over 200 adolescents and asked them simple questions on how they feel about their appearance. And the results shook me to my core. 76% said that they find features of their body to be ugly and unattractive. And a majority of them said that they think about these features multiple times a day. The most surprising fact for me was that 57% said that they chose not to attend social events because they hate how they look. It breaks my heart to imagine an adolescent missing out on sleepovers, birthday parties, and other lifelong memories just because they're not proud of their appearance. I have personal experience with this. One of my friends refused to go to another friend's birthday party because they weren't happy with how they looked and their skin had just broken out hours prior. And I had to convince them that it's okay, no one's going to pay that much attention. And eventually, they decided to go because of my advice. And they were happy they didn't miss out on that memory. The study also asked adolescents what were their most common insecurities for both men and women. For men, being seen as not muscular was first, with acne and height taking second and third. For women, being seen as overweight was first, with skin complexion and facial hair taking second. Now, this entire study just goes to show that body dysmorphia and body insecurity is not only a problem, but an epidemic. Now, where does this problem come from? It has a variety of stems. like OCD, perfectionism, abuse, a bad self-image. A lot of reasons, but to not take up too much of your time, I'll sum it up into two simple reasons. Perfectionism and a bad self-esteem. People who have OCD or who are inclined to be a perfectionist are very harsh on their bodies and are never proud of how they look. This leads to body dysmorphia. People who have dealt with abuse, rejection, bullying have a lower self-esteem. This leads to body dysmorphia. Genetics also definitely play a role. In fact, if a child's parents have body dysmorphia, they are 4 to 8 times more likely to develop it. But the sad truth is, body dysmorphia is actually incredibly understudied. In fact, there have been 16 times more studies regarding OCD than body dysmorphia, even though more people in the US have body dysmorphia than OCD. There's also an evolutionary reason to this problem. Through millions of years of evolution, humans have learned that the better we look and the more successful we are, the higher chance we have of finding a mate. Finding a mate means to having offspring. Is it not the goal for every species on Earth to reproduce, to keep the species going, to save it from extinction? Yes, and that same thing applies to humans. This evolutionary trait gives us the habit of comparing ourselves to other people and the constant push to look better. Now, everything I've said so far culminates to one thing. The man in the mirror is an illusion. When you look in the mirror, you don't see the real you. You see an illusion. You see how you want yourself to look like in the future, and you don't see all the amazing qualities that you currently have. The human mind is harsh, it's critical, it's ruthless, but it's also sensitive. In fact, a simple girl just looking at a Barbie doll makes her feel worse about herself. And the introduction of social media does us no favors. With just the touch of a button, you can compare yourselves to some of the most attractive people on earth and see the best of your friend's camera rolls. With improvements in artificial intelligence and technology, things are only going to get worse. I predict that in just a few years, with the touch of a button, you can make yourself look skinnier or more muscular on any Instagram post you please. Now, who creates this illusion? Can you believe that there are industries in this world that thrive off the insecure? The goal of their advertisements is to make you feel worse about yourselves. One of these companies or industries is the beautification industry. The goal for many advertisements for skin, hair, and makeup products is to make people feel worse about themselves. Why do you think all of these advertisements are full of supermodels and celebrities? It's to make you feel like you need to buy these products to reach their heights. Another subset of the beautification industry are beauty pageants. Beauty pageants target adults, teenagers, and even children. To me, there is nothing more disgusting than a child beauty pageant. Adults ranking children on most to least attractive, ranking them on how cute they can look in front of an audience. Does that not appall you? Another industry that makes people feel more insecure is the movie industry. Companies like Marvel and DC give their actors very little time to make insane transformations. What does this do? This forces them into steroid use. This may come as a shock to the uninitiated, but almost every jacked star that you see on the big screen is on steroids, and they're forced under contracts by these movie companies to lie about it. I want to introduce you to Chris Hemsworth. Marvel forced him to make the transformation from a young, skinny Australian young adult to Thor, the god of thunder, in just 1 year. What does this do? This forces him into steroid use to actually get the part. and he has to lie about it. I can't imagine how many young teenagers followed Chris Hemsworth's exact diet and workout plan, hoping that they looked like the God of Thunder in the same time frame that he did it in, and were heartbroken when they weren't able to do the same thing. Clearly, this issue goes deep, and what we have done so far is not good enough. For example, the body positivity. This movement had the right idea. Make people feel better in their skin, right? But how it was done was incorrect. It glorified having an unhealthy lifestyle and having an unhealthy body and communicated that that's perfectly fine. All this did was kill the innocent. I have 3 possible solutions that, if implemented, could make a huge difference. First, CEOs and decision makers have to realize if their advertisements and their products are hurting the self-esteem of the next generation. They have to realize by them making a profit, they could be hurting someone else's self-esteem. They could be hurting an innocent soul. Second, all of you. Yes, I mean you. I see CEOs, researchers, college students, and future success stories in this very room. Use your platform or your future platform to spread awareness on this idea. Team up with universities and other researchers to research this problem. For a problem that's taking over this world, it makes no sense that there's so little research. Research leads to better solutions. Third, only the creator can destroy their own creation. Look within yourselves. See what all of these industries and social media platforms are doing to your self-esteem. Next time you find yourself comparing yourself to someone else, think about all the amazing qualities that you have today. Yes, it's amazing to have goals for the future, to strive to be better, but those goals cannot come at the expense of your mental health. The future for this problem is unknown, but I know that it is hopeful. For now, we can start by spreading the simple idea that the man in the mirror is an illusion, a facade created by your insecurities. Thank you.
Wonderful speech, Keshav, with a message that unfortunately brings to all too many of us. I'd like to open up questions, gentlemen.
Keshav, that was a great speech. Lots of really good information. So, you spoke about beauty pageants, movies, beauty companies. Those have all been around for a while, right? And we've not had the problem of disproportion till date. And a lot of that probably has to do with social media, right? That's the new thing on the block, which is really sort of exacerbating this problem. What are your thoughts on regulation of social media and the TikToks and the algorithms, that we come up with, which really probably problem?
Of course, freedom of expression is incredibly important in any social media platform, and I think that there would be a global outrage if people tried to censor what people were saying in all these platforms and prevented people from advertising their products. One solution that I have is change how we advertise them. I remember when I was growing up watching shows on Nickelodeon, there would be ads for Proactive, which is this acne medication. And I thought that how they marketed it was perfect. They got people who tried the product, just typical teenagers like the people that were watching the programs, and showed their before and after and said, yes, it did make a big difference. And this difference could be possible if you try the product. That's a great way to market it. And that prevents people from hurting themselves. In another way that companies do it in a wrong way is if they get supermodels to strut down the runway and say, if you want to look like me, get this product. all that does is just make people compare themselves to these supermodels. And I think that social media and these social media companies shouldn't restrict companies from advertising their products, but the companies themselves should take note on how they can advertise it without hurting the innocent.
Keshav, very persuasive argument. I had a question. You have listed here BS in economics and finance. Are you sure you don't want to pursue mental health? I was really impressed with all the knowledge that you showed and described as it relates to the body image. The body image issues existed many years even before social media existed or even thought about. Looking back at my teenage years and that era, it's always existed. My question to you is this: I'm trying to, as I was listening to you, I was thinking of the singer who uses so very heavy and uses her weight, obese body, to promote that acceptance of what you are. I can't remember her name. I don't listen to her music, but I remember reading about it. I was really, blown away, inspired by that. Do you remember that name? Lizzo.
Yeah. So the idea behind what she's doing is great because a lot of people are overweight and that's perfectly fine and natural and it happens. And what she's doing is right in a sense in that she's just saying that it's okay. I can still look beautiful and be overweight. That's perfectly fine. But what the body positivity movement overall communicated was that it glamorized an unhealthy lifestyle. And I think that that's incredibly unhealthy, where people who are dealing with these problems shouldn't hate themselves because that's horrible for anyone to deal with. But they should always work hard to make sure that their health is at the best it can be. And what you said before about going into mental health, I think that mental health can be applied to any field in that in any business, we can always implement mental health strategies for the work-life balance of the employees themselves and whoever buys our products. So, yeah.
I have a question for you. It's agreed that unethical business practices and marketing is wrong, and we get done that. So let's keep that separate, right? If somebody is false marketing, that's a different problem, right? Let me come back to this because I enjoy watching Marvel movies. But see, there is a line between inspiration and being deceived. If we look at everything and think that's bad, but where do we get that inspiration sometimes?
The thing I was talking about for the Marvel movies about being deceived was that it could be inspirational, but I'm not a fan of how they lie that their stars are natural and they're forced to lie about it because it just gives teenagers false expectations.
No, Marvel was just an example. I'm just generally talking about a line between inspiration and deceiving. You need things like looking at somebody and getting inspired. You're doing economic and finance. Maybe the whole Berkshire Hathaway will look like, oh my God, I want to be like Warren Buffett, right? Or are you going to hate it?
No. So there is a fine line between inspiration and being deceived. So anyone can be inspired by anyone. If you look around the room, you'll see people and everyone has great qualities and you can learn from them. Where I think that someone is being deceived is when lies come into play. So if any industry or any singular person is lying, that all that does is hurt someone, and they're hurt when they aren't able to reach their same heights. So anyone can be an inspiration, but if someone is an inspirational figure that person has to be honest to not deceive other people.
So, going back to wrestling and when you first looked in the mirror versus when you look in the mirror today, what do you see?
I'm still a work in progress. I haven't fully been content with how I look, and I'm always going to work to be better, but it's definitely better than it was before. I have made a lot of progress in the time it's been since my sophomore year, and I always acknowledge the difference from when I started to how I look now. But I always see myself as a work in progress, and I still deal with the same problems that I have dealt with before. And I think that with the practices that I said in my possible solutions, it's possible in a long time and with a lot of work for myself and with the people around me that I'm sure that I will have a big difference in my issues later on.
Just want to admire your strength in publicly, talking about what you're struggling with. It's really admirable.
From what I've seen with my friends that I work out with, all of them deal with these problems, and I think that it's important to have a voice to actually talk about it and make people feel more comfortable with it.
Not so fast.
Oh, sorry.
So again, very intriguing topic, just like the previous one was. I was slightly comparing you, and it stems from the fact that industry has and always will continue to be exploitated, right? And someone talked about the money cycle, and that's in full effect in this place. That's the reason why these things happen. Anywhere there's an opportunity, industry will exploit. Of course, with the customary not to any corporate social responsibility. Now, as the previous speaker said, it all starts in school. So you talked about how the industry, the businesses, they'll do what benefits them the most. But what is being done to infuse more of a spine in people in the younger generation? I mean, they said it doesn't start at school. What's being done at home. You don't need to get into that, but maybe it all starts with developing a bit more spine and then saying, look, I'm fine the way I am. I want to do what I want to do. I don't need to be influenced by popular narratives, that sort of thing. What's your take on that?
This generation has the highest levels of anxiety and depression in any generation before. And I think a lot of that stems from social media and comparing yourself from social media. So from a young age, this all is so new. We're expanding so rapidly and technology expanding so rapidly that school and education needs to catch up. And I think a lot of it does start in a classroom where I think psychology and health should be talked about for every student and required for every student to learn about. What we learn in health class does not go deep enough. As Sachi talked about before, it was so that schools aren't going deep enough and students still suffer from these problems. So realizing teachers need to implement into their work plans and their lesson plans lessons on how we can stop comparing ourselves and get students ready for when they leap into the whole digital world and when they become teenagers, because teenagers have a natural drive to fit in, and that's where a lot of the comparison to other people starts. So preparing students for that journey is really important.
Thank you. Well done.
If there's no more questions from the judges, we'll open up to the audience again. Hopefully more luck this time. A stunning silence. That's all right. We'll move on to our next speaker. Thank you, Keshav.